I'm Petra Hackworth, Vice President of Global Sales at Travel Oregon. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for this Oregon Tourism Engagement Session. Today, tourism is about place and experience. So as we begin, it's important to take a moment to acknowledge the more than 60 tribes and bands of Indigenous peoples that have lived in the Northwest region since time immemorial. We're grateful for the land itself, for those who have stored it for generations and continue to do so today, and for the opportunity to study, learn, work, and be in a community on this land. I'll also note some meeting tools and our best meeting practices. One tool we are utilizing today is the use of closed captioning. This is an important tool in supporting improved meeting accessibility and aligns with both statewide and Travel Oregon's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Should you prefer, you may turn the feature off by using the closed captioning button located in the Zoom controls at the bottom of your screen. Please reach out to our technical host, Pete, if you are experiencing any difficulties or need technical assistance during this meeting. Use a chat feature and send a chat directly to the technical host so they can assist you. Should you have any questions about the meeting topics or process, please send a chat directly to Kate Zappel on the Travel Oregon team. Additionally, in support of an inclusive and collaborative process that invites all to join in, we ask that you please keep yourself muted unless speaking, participate by being fully present and engaged. If you need to step away or take a break, please do so. Respect the process and respect other people, the unique experiences, perspectives, and values that others bring. Respect our time and be collaborative by keeping it brief and focused on the current topic. Create space for others to be heard. Speak from your own experiences and use I statements. I'd like to thank you all again for taking the time to join us today and acknowledge the challenges you, our tourism industry partners, have experienced firsthand from the pandemic over the past year. As we all know, the tourism industry has been greatly impacted, more so than any other economic sector. The recent National Jobs Report found that nearly 4 in 10 jobs lost nationwide are in the leisure and hospitality sector, and the travel industry has suffered a $500 billion loss in visitor spending. In Oregon, this is translated to visitors spending 58% less in 2020 than in 2019, which has resulted in a 24% drop or 28,500 fewer tourism-related jobs statewide in just 1 year. As we turn the page to 2021, with its promise of a vaccine and hope for recovery, we also acknowledge that this year will continue to bring challenges to the industry. Although we operate this highly fluid and uncertain economic climate, we must set strategies and goals for the future. First, targeting the immediate rebuilding as well as a long-range vision for the future of Oregon's tourism industry and economy. Today's meeting is intended as a start at doing just that. First, you'll be hearing from Nastasia Olson, Project Manager of Strategy, who will be taking some time to walk you through Travel Oregon's strategic planning efforts. She will share some statewide results from the 2020 stakeholder survey and ask you a series of polling questions, ensuring we're continuing to focus on responding to your greatest needs. This information will be used to help Travel Oregon make strategic and programmatic funding decisions. Next, we will shift the focus of the meeting to the Willamette Valley Visitors Association's regional conversation. Harry Delgard, Director of the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program, will share an overview of the program and the regional strategic planning process. From there, our regional partners, Danielle Tehema and Tori Milstadt, will be joining us, presenting their 2021-23 draft strategic plan, and will facilitate a breakout group discussion so you can provide feedback. Your time here today will help us shape the tourism strategies and funding decisions for your region. With that, I'm very pleased to introduce Nastasia. Thank you all again for coming. Nastasia, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Petra. Again, I'm Nastasia Olson, Travel Oregon Strategic Project Manager. So as we launch into this process to develop Travel Oregon's 4-year strategic plan to guide us through rebuilding Oregon's economy, I'm pleased to share a little bit about the approach before I'll dive into asking you some polling questions, as Petra shared. So as Petra mentioned, while we begin to see the dire impacts of COVID begin to lighten on the tourism industry, we also continue to operate in this highly fluid and uncertain economic climate. To be responsive and intentional in this environment, we will be undertaking Travel Oregon's strategic planning through a two-phased approach. So what this means is we will be launching a short-term rebuild plan this spring, serving as a catalyst from COVID crisis to an emphasis on short-term rebuilding, focusing on repair and investing in key opportunities to restore tourism. And as we shift from the crisis strategies that we've been in now to these rebuild strategies, we must also continue to recognize the magnitude of what the tourism industry has experienced these past 12 months. Born out of these challenges is the opportunity for growth and the responsibility to re-examine the role of tourism in the future of Oregon's economy. We are seeing visitors shift their behaviors, some of which may become permanent. We're also seeing the impacts of climate change and more extreme weather patterns and longer and more intense wildfire seasons. And we have the long overdue need to put conversations and policies against racial injustice at the forefront of our decisions. So all of this is paramount that while we rebuild, we must also rethink. So while reimagining the future, which already seems very uncertain, may sound completely intimidating, it's also an exciting and necessary opportunity for regrowth and transformation, ensuring our industry does not return to business as usual, but rather emerges more resilient and an even greater and relevant economic driver for our state. So this two-phased approach will also allow us a chance to set a longer range vision. It allows us to extend the rebuild plan into the transformational one through the year 2025. And it allows us more time for meaningful industry engagement with all of you, and to ensure that the work is integrated through an equity lens. So with all of this in mind, I wanted to take a quick pulse from this group in the Willamette Valley region to assess alignment for this planning process from your perspective. So momentarily, you'll be seeing two polls pop up. And really, these are just, again, to quick pulse, kind of gauge where your thinking is and whether you agree or disagree with the following statements. These polls are anonymous, and just make sure that you press submit after you see them. So this first one here, again, is really just in response to what I was talking about with the transformational planning process. So in order for the future of Oregon's tourism industry to be even more resilient and more relevant, we must rethink and reimagine how the tourism industry functions in Oregon. Okay, so that's wonderful. We have a lot of agreement with this approach. Thank you, everyone. So with this next poll is in regards to the equity work. So Oregon Governor Brown has proclaimed it is the duty of every state agency to apply the Oregon Equity Framework to develop agency-specific strategies and concrete actions to address racial and economic disparities. Travel Oregon is a state economic development agency. As such, it should play a role in helping achieve racial economic equity for Oregonians. Looks like we have very strong agreement. Okay, thank you all for your perspective. So I will be doing some more polling here shortly, but I did want to share with you a timeline of where we are at in this two-phased planning approach. I want to point out that following these engagement sessions that you're here a part of today, we're doing these all over the state for every region. So once we wrap up those, the draft Travel Oregon Rebuild Strategic Plan will be released in April, later in April for public comment. And then a public hearing will also take place at the May Oregon Tourism Commission meeting. And then upon the adoption of the rebuild plan at the June Commission meeting, we'll really be kicking off the second phase of this more transformational planning process at the Governor's Conference on Tourism in June. So really hopeful everyone can attend that. And following the conference, there will be additional chances for stakeholder input into the fall of this year. We'll be doing a series of one-on-one interviews with industry members, focus groups, co-creation labs, and an equity assessment. So these opportunities are vital to ensure your voices are heard and responded to in our plans. So I always continue to encourage your participation. We will communicate all of these events through our industry newsletter, as we always do. So please make sure to keep a lookout for those there. And if you ever have any specific questions about our planning processes at Travel Oregon, you can always reach out to me directly at my email there. Okay, so jumping back to the timeline for a moment, you can see that the tourism stakeholder survey that we launched in the fall, late October, this really serves as the kickoff and a key foundation of our whole year-long planning effort. So as you know, we do these in partnership with the regions, and it's really important for the regional plans as well. So you'll be hearing more about it specifically from the region. But I will be walking you through some mainly high-level statewide results. But again, really hopeful that you all were able to participate in that, because it is such a pivotal piece to our planning effort. But we will be taking the opportunity here to kind of confirm some of those results that we heard, to see if those top priorities and destination management challenges and needs are still accurate from your perspective. So before I launch into these polls, I also just wanted to share there will be an other option on some of these. So if you can make sure to share if you have any of those other comments in the chat, so we can make sure that we capture those. Okay, so here with this first slide, you can see this was the response from your specific region for Willamette Valley. The top concerns for welcoming visitors to your community included diminished visitor experience due to facility and amenity closures, safety of staff and visitors at restaurants and outdoor recreation experiences, and negative resident sentiments towards visitors. So again, with this poll that you'll see popping up, what we're hoping to do is just reconfirm and or see if any of those priorities or your top concerns have really shifted. So please choose your top 3 for your community and make sure to press submit. So you can see here with the sharing, it does look like the diminished visitor experience due to amenity closures is still a pretty big concern, as well as safety of staff, workforce, and visitors. So that's helpful. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so moving on to this slide. Again, this was really the statewide priorities, which your region was representative of in here, but this is the kind of the high level results. These were the programs and resources identified to assist businesses and organizations specifically in rebuilding in the next 6 months. So you can see here, helping advocate for effective policies and funding to support tourism businesses and organizations, tools and training to improve business communications and marketing, networking and learning from other professionals in your sector were really some of the things that popped up as priorities. So again, with this poll, we'll be relisting these and asking you to choose your top 3 that you believe will support your specific business and or organization the most in the next 6 months. You can share those results. So it looks like we're still pretty on board with helping advocate for effective policies, tools and training, really support adapting to business models and plans. So great, that's very helpful. All right, and on this next slide, you can see that as a result of COVID, the top statewide priority resource and programs to assist communities that we saw in rebuilding for the next 6 months included support developing and bolstering visitor experiences that are COVID appropriate and enhance local livability. Communication tools and frameworks to convey safe visitor behavior in towns and businesses, and land stewardship strategies and processes to help ensure outdoor recreation experiences are kept pristine. Were really some of the top priorities for communities. So again, with this poll, same drill. Please take a few moments to choose your top 3 that you believe will really help your community specifically. Okay, thank you everyone. I know we're kind of doing rapid fire polling, so hopefully you're able to get those in. Again, you can see support development of visitor experiences that are COVID appropriate is still really the highest, and those communication tools and frameworks. So, okay, helpful for us to know. Okay, so with this last slide here on the survey results and this next poll, you'll see this is really about the high level tactical planning and destination management strategies to expand economic impact of tourism and to ensure its vitality and sustainability. And so this is a series of tactical, planning tools that we have, and this was a ranking option. So it was to choose what was most important. So there's not an other category on this one that you'll see coming up on this poll, but really, again, just to reaffirm the ranking and to see if we are kind of correct in this thinking. So with this 6th poll, this will be my final poll. I know you're probably polled out at this point. But again, please choose, what you feel are the 3 top statements that really are the top tactical planning and destination management priorities for you. Okay, so some of these came in fairly close. Dispersing visitation across seasons really jumped up as the most important. So that's interesting to see. Okay, thank you again, everyone, for those. And with this, I will finish with one final question. So please include this in the chat. What is your one specific experience, place, or product in your community you believe is very important to rebuild over the next 2 years? And again, this can be a specific location, business, product, also anything you feel is most important. So again, put those in the chat and we'll make sure to capture those. And with that, I want to just thank you again so much for your time today. It is my pleasure to now introduce Harry Dalgard, the Regional Cooperative Tourism Director. He'll be leading you through the regional specific planning focus for the remainder of this meeting and with our regional partners. So Harry, kick it off.
Awesome, thanks Taj. And thank you all again for joining us today. I think it's safe to say that working with regional stakeholders and getting an opportunity to understand the regional needs and dynamics is what stokes me up most about Oregon. And no doubt we would love to be hosting these engagements in person and being able to network with you more and hear about how you are all doing. But until then, it's really awesome to see all your faces. Can't wait till we get a chance to do more of it. So first, I just want to share with you some real quick context about the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program before we get a chance to hear from Danielle and Tori and Katie about how and where they're positioning their RCDP investments and programming. So as a quick reminder, 20% of the statewide transient lodging tax that Travel Oregon receives is encumbered, and it's used to implement the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program. The RCTP program divides Oregon into 7 different regions, and we work directly with 7 different regional destination management organizations on aligning planning, programming, and developing opportunities with the industry. So moving on. I know you're a little timeline weary at this point, so with that, thanks, Staj. But with that said, here's another timeline for you. This one's here to just orient you where we are in terms of how program planning and administration works with the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program to show where we are in that planning timeline. So as we've all been acquainted through the initial part of the timeline, if we could just go back to that slide real quick, just back one slide. Yeah, thanks. We completed a statewide survey and distributed those survey reports. We had a really awesome opportunity today to relook at them with Staj. The Willamette Valley Visitors Association has since drafted a draft plan, which we'll get into here at the latter part of the meeting. And we're here in the yellow shaded box at these regional stakeholder gatherings. And the idea here is to really get further input and insights from you all in regards to how the RDMO is able to really best take advantage of opportunities on the ground. The last few steps in this planning timeline are developing the final plan. Travel Oregon will approve those final plans, and then we'll come back to you all as stakeholders sometime in the fall and present to you all what those final plans look like and how your businesses and or organizations can best take advantage of what's included in those plans. So moving on. Thanks. I also wanted to take some time to just share with you some overall macro level programming adjustments that we did at Travel Oregon to ensure that the RCTP program was resilient through all the turbulent events of 2020. The first of which was modifying our operating guidelines for RCTP. So we implemented a set of emergency management guidelines. And really the key points within those guideline modifications was ensuring that the program was able to be resilient through COVID and also give us an opportunity to look at what disaster management scenarios look like. So we made these guidelines broad enough to implement, knock on wood, in further disaster situations. But primarily, the guidelines are there to ensure that those have enough quota for staffing administration and really focuses the needs on being responsive to the industry. The next thing that we really did as a collective or cohort was invest time and energy in diversity and equity and inclusion training. So all the RDMOs, 7 RDMOs across the state completed collaborative DEI training and really addressed considerations around racial inequity and racial justice as it pertains to the travel and tourism industry. And then lastly, one of the key elements that just actually came up, and I'll be addressing this in a future slide, was some additional resource to the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program via Regional Recovery and Stability Funding. So I'll pass on the next slide here. Just moving on to the next slide. Gotcha. Okay, so these 3 pie charts that are up right now really demonstrate how the RCTP program is configured. The top pie chart really represents normal operating conditions, so you can see how programming budgets are typically distributed. And then the bottom 2 pie charts really illustrate how those disaster and emergency response guidelines impact the overall budgeting across the 7 different RDMOs. So we'll move on to the next slide. And I also want to take just a quick moment here before I hand it off to Danielle and team to really look at budgets for RCTP. So as you can see on the slide, the overall program funding dropped from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. As mentioned earlier, RCTP is directly tied to TLT funding. So this drop was to be expected based on what we were seeing at the state level that Petra mentioned at the start of the session. That said, a delta between what was forecast in the late spring of 2020 and the actual transient lodging tax collections led to the need to revise revenue forecast. At its February 21 meeting, the Oregon Tourism Commission approved a budget modification that will direct 1.5 million of this resource to the 7 regional destination management organizations via the recovery and stability funds. That's what I mentioned earlier. This additional resource is going to the regions, does not quite bring them up exactly to where they were in fiscal year 21, but it should help lessen the financial impact of the past year. In terms of programming this resource, the intent is to help RDMOs actualize programming investments in product development that was put on hold and or delayed due to the turbulent events of 2020 and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So some key considerations around these regional recovery and stability funds. Once in-state marketing is permitted by the governor's office, the regional recovery and stability funds can be used for in-state marketing So that's an awesome opportunity for RDMOs to take advantage of that typically is not permitted via the RCTP program. Additionally, regions may choose to invest regional recovery and stability funds into regional grants or strategic investment funds to allow for investments in projects within their region that are in high demand and responsive to critical issues and needs. So to hear more about what the Willamette Valley Visitors Association is particularly looking at doing in terms of programming investments, I'm going to hand it off to Danielle Tahama and Tori Middlestadt and Katie McFall to really address what the Willamette Valley Visitors Association is doing. Take it away.
Thanks, Harry. So on these next few slides, we're going to go over a very high-level plan. As everyone on this call is aware, Oregon's Willamette Valley is one of the world's most majestic food and wine destinations. Gorgeous landscape offers endless outdoor adventure. And for more than 50 years, intentional hands, the same hands that have called in today to listen to these presentations, have cultivated the Willamette Valley into one of the world's most renowned wine countries that we love and work in. Rich character and culture you'll find here, and not only some of the best varietals to cross your palate, as I'm sure my wine industry colleagues would agree, but unrivaled outdoor adventure and off the beaten path experiences that only this land can offer. So again, we're going to walk you through some very high level overviews of what we're working on. And as you saw in Harry's last timeline, we do have quite a bit of time before we finalize these plans. And this is where our upcoming breakout session, we will be looking at some additional feedback from our industry partners in the Valley. Next slide. So some of our top priorities and goals are listed here in strategic imperatives. WAVA decided to hire the Coraggio Group late last year, early this year, and we worked directly with our board of directors and key partners across the Valley that were interviewed. And we did also send out our own survey that garnered over 120 responses. Some of the greatest strategic opportunities that came out of those interviews and that survey include continuing to increase awareness of Willamette Valley's wine and culinary experiences as world-class, expansion, activation, and promotion of outdoor recreation activities, primarily the Willamette River, biking trails, and hiking opportunities, a holistic and collaborative approach to marketing and promoting the Willamette Valley, increasing awareness of the Valley as an amazing in-state travel experience and option. Again, I emphasize in-state because that's been really one thing that we're focused on with our DMO partners directly. Leaning into Valley's accessibility to markets in the Western United States, exploring opportunities to increase agritourism and awareness of cultural experiences, and product and itinerary development that develops and clearly communicates a broad range of Valley experiences and activities. Next slide, please. Again, looking at the disbursement of our 21-23 biennium, you see the current fiscal year that we are wrapping in June. We're operating on a budget of $931,900. Our current disbursement is $568,000. That is quite the decrease. One thing that you do not see for the mathematicians that are on the call is that I do want to acknowledge that the new resiliency plan funds have not been added to this slide. We're waiting on the programming because the guidelines have not yet been identified, but that will add approximately $184,000 additional dollars to this budget line. Those dollars we're hoping to bring back grants and strategic investment fund, something we did have to halt during the pandemic this year. Our proposed project disbursement for the 22-23 fiscal is approximately $500,000. So we'll be looking at ways to partner our programming very closely with our DMOs and industry partners. Another thing to consider as we look at these numbers, although dire, is we've been working very hard. The Willamette Valley team, Katie, Tori, myself, our board, and our DMOs, we've been putting programs in place that will be heavy as far as fiscal investment now, so that when we're seeing these financial cliffs, they will have less financial responsibility on WAVA's behalf, and we'll be able to continue programming until we see the funds return to the Valley from TLT. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Tori Middlestadt to go over our global sales strategy. Tori.
Hey, thanks, Danielle. So global sales is just one of the typical buckets that would be a part of our plan. Pre-COVID, we participated a lot with Brand USA, who is, for short, easy terms, is basically the destination marketing organization for the United States at a global level. And that participation has been from ad and online booking platform investments in certain markets, and also attending travel trade shows, usually international, and then also hosting fam tours for tour operators and for international media. Since March of 2020, many of these shows have pivoted to online, so we still had appointments and still got to meet with people throughout the year and keep our relationships going. Fam tours have been on pause, and as we look into this next biennium, we want to continue this scope of work. It's really important as far as being seen on a global scale, and we do know that when it comes to the international audience, that will be a slower return. But we do support the international inbound audience. They stay longer, they spend a little more money in our region and helping our communities. We have been working also with Travel Oregon in global sales as far as doing some additional work around working with domestic-based travel advisors. These travel advisors typically would be booking US citizens to travel abroad, but as people are unwary or unable to travel abroad in this first opening of travel after the pandemic, they will be more likely to use a travel advisor to maybe go to a state or a destination in the US that they've never been before. So we're trying to make sure that we are visible there. So although we don't have our exact priorities laid out at the moment, we have a proposed budget of $77,000, and making sure that WAVA and the Willamette Valley is top of mind in this scope of work. So I am going to pass it over for the next slide, which is global marketing, and Danielle is going to speak to that programming.
Thanks, Tori. So our budget, overall proposed budget, again, these are preliminary numbers. We've identified $304,880 for global marketing spend. A lot of that is co-op marketing with Travel Oregon, and we will be co-op with our DMO partners as well. Some high level things here, TORP and Opal, that is the Travel Oregon programming for direct mail and lead generation. So we will be continuing with that program. We do partner with our DMOs, so your destination marketing organizations within each county, to assist in that lead generation and direct mail campaign. We do have a new website launching, and we'll be discussing that on a later slide. So we will be heavy with SEO optimization and growth-driven design for the new site. So we'll be building on that, understanding that in the current situation, and we're not really sure what the future holds. SEO optimization, growth-driven design, anything digital can easily be paused if necessary. We will continue to have a PR agency on staff, and our marketing campaigns, again, are going to be heavy digital with a few print ads in market, depending on the direction that we decide to go with regional input from our DMOs. We're excited to say we're starting to see media hosting and familiarization tours come back into the Valley. We're being reached by riders now to reschedule FAM tours, and we do have someone in market right now. So that's the first FAM, I think, in quite some time, and we are going to be welcoming some more writers in April. Social media strategy is always part of our upcoming strategy creation, and then content, co-op marketing again with Travel Oregon. So more on this to come. And again, we encourage you, if you're not part of a DMO on this call, connect with your destination marketing organization within your county to learn more how we're promoting and marketing regionally and how they are locally to see that synergy. I'm going to turn it back over to Tori now for global strategic partnerships.
So with global strategic partnerships, it's exactly as it sounds. It's about building partnerships and collaborations in a way that we can leverage our capacity and our dollars together to have more impact. In this line, as we report our budget for transparency, it does include our membership dues to strategic travel and trade associations, which for Oregon-based associations, that's the Oregon Destination Association. And it does include the U.S. Travel Association. And just yesterday, we participated in Destination Capitol Hill, where we met with all of the Oregon federal delegates that fall within the Willamette Valley, that represent the Willamette Valley area as our region is, and spoke to them about federal policy changes or priorities that we hope that they will back that will support our industry in its rebound. And then those associations also share some key insights and studies and data, and we pull that information and we put it in our industry newsletter list. And I will put a link to sign up for our industry news if you're not already on it, just so you can stay in the loop. We also send governor's office guidelines. In this year of COVID, the work around strategic partnerships has been a lot of public information and making sure our partners understand guidelines, how to operate, have a voice, can voice concerns or needs to me that I can push up through economic recovery and regional solutions teams that I've been participating with. Also moving forward, education opportunities. We want to make sure that our business partners, our front lines are welcoming to all and have the education they need to be successful. And sometimes that means social media and marketing education. Sometimes that means frontline specific education. And it can also include race, diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Since this summer, we have been convening a task force around RDEI, race, diversity, equity, inclusion. And this group has come together as each of our organizations kind of tackle in this space, if we're getting pushback, how we move forward together. And then this task force is now broken up into 2 committees, one specifically around training and partnering with potentially the Oregon Hospitality Foundation and a few other partners to help create some frontline training around how to be welcoming to all and what that means. And that means recognizing some of Oregon's history and why for some in different backgrounds, it may not be as welcoming here as we would like, and how we can fix that in the future. And then the other group is meeting around workforce recruiting and diversity. And so that work is still being outlined, but that could include a pay equity audit or other research and data that we can share out to our partners. So this is other opportunities that aren't here because but we envision would be around Oregon 22 and what that might look like in the next summer, and hopefully being able to have viewers there and be that far out of the pandemic by then. So this is just a flexible area where we try and work with partners and collaborate and do what Oregon does, which is work together to be a better place to live and operate and be more welcoming. So I am going to pass this over to Katie to talk about destination development. And after I do that, I will put the link in the chat box for our industry news. Next slide, please.
Hello, so I'm Katie McFall with WAVA, and so I'm just going to kind of go over some of our destination development kind of top priorities looking forward. So the first thing, as many of you know, or all of you know, fall brought a horrible fire season, and so the Detroit community and the McKenzie community were really severely affected by that through structure loss and recreational assets burned, and lots of other damage. So we're trying to plug into those areas where it seems fit and when it seems right to do that. And so that looks different for each community. And so, for example, I just want to give a little bit of a tangible idea as to what that is we're going to be launching some more volunteerism stuff in that area where people are going out and doing some work and planting trees and, doing some campsite restoration, mountain bike trail maintenance, through one of our partners, First Nature Tours. So that's just like ways that we're engaging the community and acknowledging kind of what happened and hopefully rebuilding slowly. Another scope of work that's been a priority for WAVA for like the last 2 years is the Willamette River Trail. And we obviously had to pivot due to COVID. The group started meeting in September of 2019. We have a steering committee of about 22 individuals that meet from the Marine Board, State Parks, Willamette River Keeper. And we had all these ideas in grandeur pre-COVID, and then COVID hit and it became more of a safety and visitor management kind of situation along the riverbank. So that's kind of how we pivoted. And this summer we're really focused on safety and education and then moving some of those priorities forward. I will say for the Willamette River Trail, we were also awarded a Destination Ready grant of $50,000 to really push some of that work forward, which is really exciting. So a little bit of history as well. Pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of road cycling development and creating routes and ride with GPS. We were going to send out a survey to our cycling groups in April of 2020. That obviously didn't happen. So we're kind of like wrapping up some of our road cycling assets and curation, and we're going to be moving into gravel and mountain biking to really start diving into that and do some development around that. We have a bunch of food and farm trails in the Willamette Valley, which is super exciting. And we love to support each of those trails in whatever way fits for them. So each trail kind of runs differently or has different needs. So we like to tie in and help wherever we can, with whatever capacity we can lend to them. And then finally, our kind of last destination development tactic is going to be investing in another rare AmeriCorps member. This is a little bit contingent upon pending our application approval and also pending an applicant that would want to join WAVA. So there's a little bit of contingency with with that item. But all in all, we're really busy and really excited about all this work that we're going to be doing in destination development. And in total, the proposed budget is $108,000. And I'm going to pass it back over to Danielle to wrap this up.
Thanks, Katie. So as far as our final buckets, and I do see some great questions coming through the chat, so we'll answer to those as soon as we can. But as far as our final bucket, as identified with our regional cooperative tourism program dollars, that would be staff and admin. So with our staffing capacity right now, we did lose our PR and marketing manager, Becca Barnhart. She is a full-time mom now. Ironically, here are her 2 kiddos. She did welcome a new baby in January, so she is not coming back to WAVA. So we are a staff of 2 currently. We are hopeful to maintain Katie McFall, who is our current RARE placement, AmeriCorps placement through RARE, as a full-time staff member into the next fiscal. So this overall proposed budget for the year does include staff capacity and training, tools, all the platforms we use, including Basecamp, Dropbox, etc., licensing and fees, operational vendors such as our legal advice, bookkeeping and banking, and any board management fees that come through. Next slide. And just to give you one last snapshot, again, for the sake of conversation and recapping the dollars, a couple things are missing, including that additional investment that we're waiting on guidelines for to spend that we're hopeful to bring back into the Valley for strategic investment and grants. And even if you added those things in, I will make one final mention that there still is a $36,000 variance between numbers. And just to be completely transparent with our budget, that number is part of a carryover. Again, we're anticipating approximately $200,000 in carryover. However, we do know that what we did not account for in that $200,000 are specific global strategic partnership funds and global sales funds. Tori did not travel internationally, so we are aware that there's about a $36,000 variance here. One of the questions that I do want to make note to, because we do have a lot of wine partners and it is a very important question, wine country license plate funds are not part of this proposed budget because that is a different line item. We will be outlining our full strategic plan within the region once we get our board approval and once we identify that. So the full strategic plan, as far as the full budget, will include all funding sources for WAVA as an entity, and that will be a little bit later this fiscal year. But I do appreciate the questions that came through there. And again, we welcome that feedback. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tori really quickly before breakouts.
Yeah, so we're going to get ready to kind of move into breakouts. And so if you haven't ever been in a Zoom where there's a breakout, once we do it, there'll be a little button to push to join your room and you'll transition over, and we'll be in smaller groups where it'll be easier to unmic and work together and talk through opportunities and questions about the plan and that sort of thing. We are in the break rooms, we are going to use a tool called Jamboard. It's basically like a digital whiteboard. So if we were in a room all together, we'd be writing on Post-its and pushing them in priorities and doing that sort of work. So it's like a digital version. Each breakout session person is going to share the link, show you how to start a new sticky. If you don't know how or you don't want to use this program, you can also unmute and the facilitator will help put your comments in the sticky notes on the Jamboard as well. And so these are the kind of areas of conversation that we would like. We don't want to stifle any conversation, so we want to make sure that you've been heard and that we can engage with you. The first question is really about, as we've presented this plan, what are the opportunities that also exist that maybe we don't know about, or that might be rising up in your community that you want to make sure we're aware of. Also, we're curious about metrics or goals of the next 1, 5, and 10 years for your own organizations or your own communities, so we can see where that might align regionally. And outside of wildfire and COVID, what are other areas that are important to you to achieve within this calendar year? So with that, the rooms are going to be randomly assigned. We chose to operate in this way because we'd like also our stakeholders to hear the differences of needs and what's going on in different parts of the region as we kind of stitch together a regional voice and try and tackle opportunities as they are. So with that, you should be here in the next few moments. Our tech crew will be assigning you to rooms. You'll have a facilitator. You'll get to introduce yourself, and we'll love to hear from you. Have your ability to unmute.
All right, I'll hand it over to Danielle to just encapsulate the experience.
Yeah, so thank you all. I bounced around. Part of that is because I cannot type, so I could not be a facilitator, but I did bounce around to the groups. It was great to hear some of the discussion. Before I turn it over to Harry to close up the meeting, I just wanted to thank you all again for participating today. What you see on the screen is actually a sneak peek at our new brand. And we will be launching a brand overview, our brand story. The voice really is genuine, warm, and friendly with a touch of fun and quirkiness, while also remaining informative, knowledgeable, and passionate about the land and the culture that we all know as the Willamette Valley. There is a personality that we'll be pushing out to you guys as stakeholders and partners. And really the essence is rooted in agriculture, sophisticated, handcrafted. Some other keywords that we're utilizing and were utilized to create this in partnership with Madden Media is true to land, connected by river, adventurous, bountiful, nostalgic, authentic, unpretentious, and gutsy. Again, we came to this really through a lot of stakeholder feedback. Madden Media did reach out and do interviews across the valley. So there was a lot of really collaborative effort to create this, and more to come. So with that, I'll turn it over to Harry. And again, our sincere thanks for participating today.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. So yeah, super big thank you for everyone participating in those breakout groups. And thank you specifically my group. We got cut off there, and it was a great conversation. So there is one additional opportunity to provide feedback. Today's session was recorded. So if you want to pass the recorded session along to any of your colleagues or coworkers, that's most definitely welcomed. But there is an additional feedback form that's highlighted both in the chat and then up on the slide there. That will also be posted on Travel Oregon's industry site, but that will provide one additional opportunity for stakeholders within the Willamette Valley region to give some input on some of WAVA's strategies there. So thank you again. Can't wait until these engagements are in person and get a share a beer with you all at this this phase of the engagement. So looking forward to that day, and until then, take care everyone, and hope you have an awesome spring.